Okay, so this is an experimentation. Um, Many people have been reaching out and asking if I could model what the government shutdown would look like in terms of the extended shutdown. And so in this experiment, I built a multi agent simulation in which we took in the parameters related to the dynamics of the shutdown using just public information. So there's no inside information. I have no access to uh, inside information. I have not spoken to any staffers or anybody in the US government, and just experimenting to see to what degree we can use these advanced models to accurately estimate when the shutdown would end. So, right off the bat, you could see here that we note the poly market predictions, which is a prediction market, right, of what the poly market is saying as kind of like the baseline where the prediction markets are. And it says the modal end date, according to Polymarket, is November 21st, so 51 days. And that, according to Polymarket consensus by traders, we expect a strategic extension beyond early November, ACA and SNAP crises ensuing. So this implies that the GOP may leverage shutdown to extract maximum policy concessions rather than settling quickly. So again, the modal date in terms of the market per Polymarket's prediction market is November 21st, and that aligns with the Thanksgiving holiday. Now, there's some asymmetric pressure points and key pressure points and dates, right, that are going to place different types of pressure on both sides. First, November 1 is the ACA SNAP enrollment deadline. And so what this does is that this results in disruption for Affordable Care Act enrollment and SNAP enrollment. And this favors the Republicans in terms of pressure, as it places more pressure on Democratic and blue states, and can result in lowered enrollments and disruption to enrollments of ACA and SNAP. However, on November 10th, you have the Medicare enrollment, and that hurts many GOP voters, as you have many GOP voters, 65 and older seniors, are part of the base on the Republican side, and it could affect 60 million Medicare beneficiary uh, uh, voters, which voted for the Trump administration at a plus 5 to 7 points. And that also affects provider payment, which affects red states and whatnot. And then another crisis would kick in on November 15th with the Treasury, in which there's a debt ceiling, X state 30 days away triggers institutional investors to potentially have an exodus of money market funds, forced to dump treasuries, the repo market being affected, and mortgage rates spiking potentially overnight. And this could affect the reserve currency status, etc. And then last, November 20th, which would be universal, right? This is around the Thanksgiving holiday season, and that could affect 55 million plus travelers, and TSA operating at 40% staff, and FAA air traffic controllers imposing substantial economic damage to the broader economy. So these are the asymmetric pressure points, and you could see that the current polling as of October 25th shows the president's approval rating at 42%, with 45% of the public blaming the GOP, 39% blaming Democrats. So what we did here is we ran a simulation of the negotiation process, agents, right, in terms of the positions of the various parties that are negotiating. And we ran the simulation 5,000 times over at a 75% shock probability and a shock volatility of just under 2, with 3.5 senators, GOP senators, expected for crossover, a House Freedom Caucus size of 32. The size of the Freedom Caucus is important, as the size increases, or the larger the size, the higher the probability of the shutdown being extended. and then parameters for house recall latency latency, which is 72 hours, polling blame elasticity of 2, which is high, and message volatility at 0.5. And so we run the simulations, and the simulation results show that the median end date for the shutdown is November 12th at a median of 42 days. And we could see the distribution here, right? So it spikes up in terms of uh, the shutdown end date distribution at the 42-day mark, right, which is corresponds to November 12th. And then it goes extended. You still have a high probability of extension 10 days after. So it could go all the way to November 21st or 20th, right before the Thanksgiving holiday season starts. And you could see the cumulative distribution. So the longer the shutdown goes, the higher the probability of it obviously ending. And then you could see the survival rate here. So let's go to some back testing to see historically what the previous shutdowns look like and how long they lasted, because we built these models based on calibrated data, not just from the dynamics of today in terms of the crisis going on right now, but some of the previous dynamics of prior shutdowns. So in 1995, you had a shutdown that was over the budget. It was 21 days. You had the 2013 shutdown over the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare as they call it back then, and that was 16 days. And then you have the 2018 through 19 shutdown, which was over the border wall, that was 35 days, and then the debt ceiling shutdown, which was 48 days. And the current model shows that the simulation median is about 42 days. So November 12th in terms of the simulation, and the poly market model shows 51 days. So November 21st. So in our estimate, we can estimate just based on the distribution and the simulation that the shutdown, based on what you see here on this distribution and kind of corroborating with the poly market, will likely end anywhere between November 12th and November 21st. And last, we can look at some path traces, right? And this is using a hazard modeling. And this just shows that the longer the shutdown occurs, right, the more likely you have a drop in approval rating, particularly with the president. You could see a precipitous drop in the simulated approval rating of the president, dropping precipitously between 40 and 50 days. Around the 45-day mark, it could go from the current approval rating, which is in the 40s, and drop all the way in the 20s. So the shutdown is extended, however, per the simulation. And again, this is just an experimentation with no inside data, estimated to end between November 12th and the 20th. This concludes the demonstration.